Hi and welcome to Apex Atlas. In the narrow space between two continents, between two oceans, lies a country shaped by movement. This is Costa Rica, a land where rainforests climb volcanoes, clouds drift through treetops, and life exists in extraordinary concentration. Costa Rica covers less than 1% of Earth's land surface, yet it holds nearly 5% of the planet's biodiversity. This is not by chance. Costa Rica sits at a crossroads, where north meets south, where the Pacific meets the Caribbean, and where species from different worlds collide, mix, and evolve. In this documentary, we explore the complete natural identity of Costa Rica, from its explosive geological origins, to the forests, rivers, wildlife, and seas that make it one of the most biologically rich countries on Earth. This is a story of connection, of land rising from the sea, of life migrating, adapting, and multiplying, of nature compressed into one of its most intense expressions, a bridge between worlds. To understand Costa Rica, you must begin beneath the ground. This land did not always exist. Millions of years ago, the space between North and South America was open ocean. Currents flowed freely between the Atlantic and the Pacific, and the continents evolved separately. Then the Earth began to change. Tectonic plates collided beneath the sea, forcing volcanic rock upward. Slowly, an arc of islands emerged, and over time, they fused into a narrow strip of land. Costa Rica rose from the ocean floor. Volcanoes built its backbone. Earthquakes reshaped its edges. Mountains lifted rain from passing clouds, and redirected rivers across newly formed valleys. This geological bridge changed the world. When land connected north and south, animals and plants began to migrate in both directions. Species that evolved on separate continents met for the first time, competing, adapting, and diversifying. This event, known as the Great American Biotic Interchange, turned Costa Rica into a biological gateway. Forests filled with newcomers. Predators followed prey. New ecosystems formed rapidly on land that was still geologically young. Unlike ancient continents, Costa Rica's mountains are sharp and restless. Volcanoes remain active. Earthquakes remind the land that it is still forming. The central spine of the country rises quickly from the coast, creating dramatic changes in temperature and rainfall over short distances. In a single day, one can travel from tropical beach to cool cloud forest to dry forest plains. These rapid shifts create layers of habitat stacked closely together. Rainforests thrive where moisture is abundant. Cloud forests form where mist lingers in mountain air. Dry forests emerge in rain shadows, shedding leaves to survive seasonal drought. Rivers rush from volcanic highlands to the sea, carving deep valleys and feeding wetlands along the way. Soils enriched by volcanic ash support dense plant growth, fueling food webs from insects to apex predators. Costa Rica's position between two oceans adds another layer of influence. The Pacific and Caribbean coasts experience different weather patterns. different marine ecosystems, and different rhythms of life. Together, land, sea, and sky interact constantly, creating conditions where life does not just survive. It explodes in diversity. Costa Rica is not defined by size. It is defined by connection, a bridge between continents, a meeting point of climates, a convergence of life from two worlds, and everything that follows. The forests, the wildlife, the rivers, and the seas flows from this moment. When the land itself rose to connect the Americas, rain, forest, and vertical worlds. In Costa Rica, rain is not just weather. It is architecture. It decides where forests rise, where rivers cut valleys, and where life gathers in astonishing density. Costa Rica sits squarely in the path of warm, moisture-laden winds. As these air masses move inland from the oceans, they collide with mountains that rise sharply from the coast. Forced upward, the air cools, rain falls, and it falls often. Some regions receive several meters of rainfall each year, feeding rainforests so dense that sunlight struggles to reach the forest floor. Here, growth is constant. Leaves replace leaves. Fruits ripen in succession. Life competes vertically, not horizontally, climbing trunks, vines, and branches toward light. But Costa Rica's climate is not uniform. The same mountains that pull rain from the sky also create rain shadows. On the Pacific side, particularly in the northwest, dry forests experience long dry seasons. Trees shed leaves to conserve water. Grasslands dominate open areas. Life slows, waits, then surges back with the return of rain. Between these extremes lies one of Costa Rica's most distinctive worlds, the cloud forest. At elevations where warm air meets cooler temperatures, clouds drift through the canopy itself. Moisture arrives not only as rain, but as mist that coats leaves, branches, and moss. Trees here are shorter, twisted, and heavily laden with epiphytes. Orchids, bromeliads, and ferns grow without touching the ground, drawing water directly from passing clouds. This constant moisture supports species found nowhere else. Many adapted to narrow temperature bands and stable humidity. What makes Costa Rica exceptional is how quickly these ecosystems change with altitude. Within a short distance, tropical lowland rainforest gives way to cloud forest, then to cooler highland ecosystems where temperatures drop sharply at night. These vertical layers create stacked habitats, multiple ecosystems compressed into a small area. Rivers tie them together. Born in misty highlands, they rush downslope through forests and farms, feeding wetlands before reaching the sea. Seasonal floods renew soils. Dry season flows sustain life when rain fades. Seasons here are shaped less by temperature and more by rainfall. The wet season brings growth, breeding, and abundance. The dry season brings clarity, movement, and migration. Animals shift ranges. Plants adjust cycles. Ecosystems breathe in rhythm with rain. Climate change is beginning to disrupt this balance. Rainfall patterns grow less predictable. Cloud layers rise higher up mountains. Species adapted to narrow conditions find their habitats shrinking, yet resilience remains embedded in the system. Costa Rica's forests evolved with disturbance. Storms, landslides, volcanic ash. Given space and connectivity, they recover. Rain binds this country together. It feeds forests, shapes rivers, defines where life can exist, and in what form. To understand Costa Rica, you must follow the water, from cloud to leaf, from mountain to sea. It is rain that builds the vertical whirl. DS, where life reaches its most intense expression. Forests of abundance, rainforests, dry forests and mangroves. In Costa Rica, forests are not a single landscape. They are many worlds, each shaped by water, season, and proximity to the sea. Lowland rainforests dominate the wetter regions of the country, particularly along the Caribbean coast and southern Pacific slopes. Here, rainfall is frequent and intense. Trees grow tall and close together, forming dense canopies that filter light into shifting patterns below. Life in these forests is layered. The forest floor is dark and humid, where insects recycle fallen leaves, and amphibians thrive in constant moisture. Above, trunks and vines form highways for mammals and reptiles. In the canopy, fruits, flowers, and leaves support birds, monkeys, and countless insects. Competition here is vertical. Plants race upward toward light. Animals specialize in narrow zones, some rarely touching the ground, others never leaving it. Move northwest, and the rhythm changes. In regions like Guanacaste, rainfall becomes seasonal. Dry forests replace evergreen jungle. 4 months at a time, trees shed their leaves. The forest opens. Sunlight floods the ground. Growth pauses. Then the rains return. And the transformation is sudden. Leaves reappear. Flowers bloom almost simultaneously. Insects emerge in vast numbers, followed quickly by birds and mammals. These forests are built on timing rather than constancy. Survival depends on knowing when to wait and when to act. Along rivers, estuaries, and sheltered coastlines, another forest takes hold. Mangroves, rooted in saltwater and shifting tides. These forests occupy the boundary between land and sea. Their tangled roots trap sediment, stabilize shorelines, and soften the impact of waves and storms. Mangroves are nurseries. Fish, crustaceans, and birds depend on them. During the most vulnerable stages of life, they link rivers to reefs, forests to oceans. Further inland, seasonal wetlands and swamp forests expand and contract with rainfall. During wet months, they fill with water, becoming feeding grounds for birds, reptiles, and fish. In drier periods, they retreat, leaving behind nutrient-rich soils. Together, these forests form a connected system. Rainforests capture water. Dry forests regulate seasonal flow. Mangroves protect coasts and marine life. Damage to one weakens the others. Costa Rica's forests are unusually productive, supported by fertile volcanic soils and constant renewal. They absorb carbon, regulate climate, and anchor some of the most diverse ecosystems on Earth. But they are also sensitive. Fragmentation breaks wildlife corridors. Clearing alters water flow. Climate shifts change where forests can survive. What makes Costa Rica remarkable is not just the presence of these forests, but how closely they coexist, often separated by only a short drive. In this small country, forests do not fade gradually. They change abruptly, each one demanding a different strategy for life. Together, they create a landscape where abundance is not accidental. It is the result of rain, geography, and connection. Volcanoes, mountains, and living earth. Costa Rica is alive beneath the surface. Every ridge, valley, and fertile plain in Costa Rica is shaped by forces still at work, by heat rising from deep within the earth. This land exists because of collision. Off the Pacific coast, the Cocos Plate slides beneath the Caribbean Plate, melting rock far below the surface. That molten material rises, building a chain of volcanoes that form the spine of the country. Costa Rica's mountains are young by geological standards. They are sharp, steep, and restless, a stark contrast to the worn landscapes of ancient continents. Volcanoes dominate this terrain. Some stand silent, their slopes softened by forest and time. Others remain active, releasing steam, ash, and gases that remind the land it is still forming. Arenal, Poas, Irazu, and Turrialba are not distant features. They sit close to farms, towns, and forests, integrated into daily life. Eruptions reshape landscapes quickly. Ash falls enrich soils. Lava creates new ground. Rivers are redirected. Vegetation disappears, then returns. Volcanic soils are among the most fertile on Earth, mineral-rich and well-drained. They support dense forests and productive agriculture. This fertility is one of the reasons Costa Rica's ecosystems are so biologically intense. Mountains also control climate. As moist air rises over volcanic ranges, rainfall increases dramatically on windward slopes. On the opposite side, drier conditions prevail. This creates sharp ecological boundaries. Rainforests cling to wet slopes. Cloud forests wrap higher elevations in mist. Dry forests occupy rain shadow valleys. Temperature drops rapidly with altitude. In the highlands, days are cool, nights can be cold, and ecosystems change within a few hundred meters of elevation. These gradients allow species to shift vertically in response to climate, moving uphill or downhill as conditions change. But this flexibility has limits. As warming pushes suitable habitats higher, mountain species can run out of space. Volcanoes also shape water. Springs emerge where lava layers trap groundwater. Rivers cut through soft volcanic rock, forming deep gorges and waterfalls. Even geothermal heat plays a role. Warming soils, influencing microbial life and subtly shaping plant communities. Earthquakes remind Costa Rica that stability is temporary. Shaking rearranges slopes, triggers landslides, and opens new pathways for rivers and forests alike. Yet life here evolved with disturbance. Forests regenerate quickly, plants colonize fresh ash, animals return as soon as cover and food allow. Costa Rica's geology does not oppose life. It fuels it. This is a country built by fire, refreshed by ash, and reshaped again and again. The land is never finished, and in that constant becoming, it creates the conditions for of the most vibrant natural worlds on Earth. Creatures of the crossroads. Costa Rica's wildlife exists because of connection. Positioned between two continents, Costa Rica became a meeting point, a biological bridge where species from north and south encountered one another for the first time. When the land rose and the oceans retreated, animals began to move. From the north came species adapted to temperate and subtropical worlds. From the south arrived lineages shaped by the deep tropics. Here, they met, competed, and diversified. The result is one of the most concentrated displays of biodiversity on Earth. Mammals reflect this convergence clearly. Sloths move slowly through the canopy, feeding on leaves few others can digest. Monkeys travel in troops, using sound and movement to defend territory and find food. Tapirs roam forests and wetlands, spreading seeds across wide ranges. Predators move more quietly. Jaguars patrol dense rainforest corridors, linking ecosystems from mountains to lowlands. Pumas follow prey across varied terrain, while smaller cats and carnivores occupy specialized niches. Bird life is everywhere. Toucans, macaws, and parrots fill the canopy with color and sound. Hummingbirds hover among flowers, pollinating plants adapted to precise beak shapes and flight patterns. Migratory birds add another layer. Each year, species from North America arrive to feed and rest, sharing forests with permanent tropical residents. Costa Rica becomes a seasonal refuge, a critical link in global migration routes. Reptiles and amphibians thrive in the warmth and humidity. Frogs emerge after rain, their calls echoing through forest nights. Many display vivid colors, warnings of toxins developed through chemical defense. Snakes and lizards specialize in narrow habitats, some confined to specific elevations or forest types. Their distributions shift rapidly with temperature and moisture. Insects dominate unseen. Beetles, butterflies, ants, and pollinators outnumber all other animals combined. They recycle nutrients, pollinate plants, and form the foundation of every food web. What makes Costa Rica exceptional is not only the number of species, but how closely they coexist. In a single valley, one may find rainforest mammals, cloud forest birds, and dry forest reptiles within a short distance of one another. This density creates resilience, but also vulnerability. Many species depend on intact corridors to move between habitats. Fragment forests, and populations become isolated, break migration routes, and entire life cycles collapse. Costa Rica's wildlife tells a global story. It shows what happens when ecosystems connect, when movement is possible, and when landscapes remain linked from ridge to river to reef. This is not a zoo of isolated species. It is a living network, a crossroads where life from two continents continues to meet, adapt, and thrive. Rivers, rain, and living water. In Costa Rica, water is never still for long. It falls from the sky in warm, heavy rain, seeps into volcanic soils, emerges as springs, and rushes downhill toward the sea. Because the country is narrow and mountainous, rivers here are short, but powerful. Born high on volcanic slopes, they descend rapidly, cutting deep valleys and narrow gorges, before spilling into wetlands, estuaries, and coastal seas. Rain gives these rivers their rhythm. During the wet season, watercourses swell suddenly, banks overflow, floodplains fill, nutrients spread across lowlands, feeding forests, farms, and wetlands alike. In the dry season, many rivers shrink, but rarely disappear. Groundwater stored in porous volcanic rock continues to feed streams and springs, keeping water flowing when rain pauses. These seasonal pulses sustain life. Fish migrate upstream to breed. Amphibians time their emergence to rainfall. Birds gather along river edges where food concentrates. Wetlands form where rivers slow. Swamps, marshes, and floodplain forests expand and contract with the seasons. Acting as natural sponges, they absorb excess water during storms and release it slowly during drier months. These wetlands are among the most productive ecosystems in the country. They filter sediment, trap pollutants, provide refuge for reptiles, birds, insects, and fish. They are also critical buffers against floods. Water connects land to sea. Rivers carry nutrients from forests and farms into estuaries and mangroves. There, freshwater meets saltwater, creating zones of intense biological activity. Mangroves depend on this flow. Too little sediment, and coastlines erode. Too much, and marine habitats suffer. Balance matters. Because Costa Rica's rivers are fast, they respond quickly to change. Deforestation increases runoff. Soils wash away. Floods become more destructive. Downstream ecosystems feel the impact almost immediately. Climate change adds another layer of uncertainty. Rainfall patterns are shifting. Storms arrive in shorter, more intense bursts. Dry seasons lengthen in some regions. Rivers swing between extremes, from flood to scarcity, testing ecosystems adapted to reliable seasonal cycles. Yet resilience remains strong. Protected forests regulate flow. Healthy soils absorb rainfall. Restored wetlands reduce flood damage. Costa Rica has learned that water is not something to control, but something to work with. When rivers are allowed space to move, to flood, and to retreat again, They sustain life far beyond their banks. In this country, water is not just a resource. It is the thread that ties mountains to forests, forests to wetlands, and wetlands to the sea. Follow the rivers, and you follow the story of Costa Rica. It's LF, a land where rain becomes life. Again and again. 2 oceans, 1 coastline. Few countries are shaped so completely by the sea as Costa Rica. In just a few hundred kilometers, its land touches 2 very different oceans, the vast Pacific to the west, and the warm Caribbean to the east. Each coast follows its own rhythm. Each supports its own world of life. Along the Pacific, the coastline is rugged and dynamic. Headlands, cliffs, and long crescent beaches face powerful swells rolling in from across the ocean. Here, tides are strong. Waves reshape the shore daily. Nutrients stirred from the deep fuel-rich marine food webs. Upwellings bring cold, nutrient-rich water to the surface, feeding plankton blooms that support fish, seabirds, and large predators. This productivity draws life from far beyond Costa Rica's borders. Whales migrate along the Pacific coast, arriving to breed and give birth in warm, sheltered waters. Dolphins hunt cooperatively near shore. Sharks patrol reef edges and open water alike. Between land and sea, estuaries and mangrove forests take hold. These tangled coastal forests act as buffers, absorbing wave energy, filtering runoff from rivers, and providing nurseries for countless marine species. On the Caribbean side, the coast tells a different story. Here, the sea is calmer, tides are gentler, coral reefs grow closer to shore, forming shallow lagoons rich with fish and invertebrates. Seagrass meadows spread across sandy bottoms, feeding turtles and stabilizing sediment. Reefs protect the coastline from erosion, while mangroves anchor river mouths and estuaries. Rainfall patterns differ as well. The Caribbean coast receives rain throughout much of the year, feeding lush coastal forests and steady river flow. The Pacific side experiences stronger seasonal contrasts, with pronounced wet and dry periods. These differences shape marine life. Fish spawn at different times. Coral growth responds to temperature and clarity. Nesting cycles of sea turtles align with seasonal conditions. Costa Rica's beaches are among the most important nesting sites in the world. For sea turtles, each year, thousands return to the same stretches of sand, emerging under cover of darkness to lay eggs, before disappearing back into the sea. This connection between land and ocean is delicate. Sediment from deforested hills can smother reefs. Pollution carried by rivers affects coastal ecosystems. Overfishing disrupts food webs built over millennia. Yet protection makes a difference. Marine reserves along both coasts allow fish populations to recover. Mangrove restoration strengthens shorelines. Responsible tourism reduces pressure on sensitive habitats. Costa Rica's oceans are not boundaries. They are extensions of the land. What happens in forests and rivers echoes outward into reefs and open sea. And what happens in the ocean returns to shore through food, weather, and life itself. Between two oceans, Costa Rica stands as a meeting place, where land, water, and life remain tightly connected. Humans and conservation, living with nature. In Costa Rica, nature is not something kept at a distance. It is part of daily life, woven into the economy, the culture, and the national identity. For much of the 20th century, Costa Rica followed a familiar path. Forests were cleared for agriculture and cattle. Lowland rainforests disappeared rapidly. Wildlife retreated into shrinking refuges. By the 1980s, forest cover had fallen to some of its lowest levels in history. Then something changed. Costa Rica made a national decision, not to exploit its natural wealth quickly, but to protect it deliberately. The country began expanding national parks and reserves, eventually protecting more than a quarter of its land area. Rainforests, cloud forests, volcanoes, wetlands, and coastlines were placed under long-term protection. But conservation did not stop at park boundaries. A groundbreaking approach followed. Landowners were paid to protect forests, not clear them. Trees gained value not only as timber, but as living systems that store carbon, regulate water, and support biodiversity. As a result, forests returned. Hillsides once stripped bare regrew with native vegetation. Wildlife corridors reconnected isolated habitats. Animals began to move again, from mountain to lowland, from forest to river. Ecotourism became a cornerstone of the economy. Visitors arrived not to conquer nature, but to experience it quietly, walking forest trails, watching birds, listening to rain in the canopy. This shift created incentives to protect wildlife rather than remove it. Jobs emerged in guiding, research, conservation, and restoration. Nature became a source of long-term stability. Local communities play a central role. Many reserves are managed with community involvement, combining scientific monitoring with local knowledge. Farmers adopt wildlife-friendly practices. Reforestation projects restore degraded land, while supporting livelihoods. Education reinforces the cycle. Environmental awareness is embedded early, shaping generations who view forests, rivers, and oceans as shared responsibility. Challenges remain. Tourism must be managed carefully. Development pressures persist along coasts and valleys. Climate change adds new uncertainty to carefully balanced systems. But Costa Rica demonstrates something rare, that conservation and development do not have to be opposites, that a small country with limited resources can make decisions that ripple far beyond its borders. Costa Rica's success is not perfection. It is commitment, a recognition that living with nature, rather than against it, offers resilience in a changing world. And in that choice, this country has become a global example of what is possible when protection becomes policy and nature becomes a partner. Nature under pressure. Despite its reputation as a conservation leader, The natural world of Costa Rica is not immune to strain. Protection has slowed loss, but pressure has not disappeared. It has changed form. One of the most persistent challenges is fragmentation. While large national parks remain intact, many ecosystems beyond their borders are divided by roads, farms, and development. Forests become corridors rather than continuous landscapes. Wildlife must cross human-dominated spaces to survive. For species that depend on wide territories, jaguars, tapirs, and migratory birds, these breaks can be dangerous. Roads increase mortality. Noise and light disrupt behavior. Isolated populations lose genetic diversity over time. Along the coasts, pressure is growing fast. Tourism infrastructure expands toward beaches, estuaries, and mangroves. When development outpaces planning, natural buffers are removed. Mangroves are cleared. Wetlands drained. Sediment and pollution flow directly into reefs and seagrass meadows. The result is subtle but cumulative damage. Reefs grow more slowly. Fish numbers decline. And coastlines become more vulnerable to storms. Climate change amplifies every existing stress. Dry seasons in parts of the Pacific slope are becoming longer and hotter. Rivers run lower. Dry forests struggle to regenerate after fire. In the mountains, cloud layers are lifting higher upslope. Species adapted to constant mist find their habitats shrinking, with nowhere left to move. Marine ecosystems face their own challenges. Rising ocean temperatures cause coral bleaching. Changing currents affect fish distribution. Acidifying seas weaken coral skeletons and shell-forming organisms. Even Costa Rica's success brings pressure. As ecotourism grows, popular parks and reserves face overcrowding. Trails erode. Wildlife becomes stressed by constant human presence. The challenge is not whether conservation works. It clearly does. The challenge is scale and balance. Costa Rica's ecosystems evolved under stable rhythms of rain, temperature, and movement. Rapid change, even well-intentioned change, can push systems beyond what they are adapted to handle. Yet pressure here is met with awareness. Monitoring programs track ecosystem health. Wildlife corridors are expanded and restored. Development regulations are refined. Nature under pressure does not mean nature defeated. It means nature responding to limits. Costa Rica stands at a critical point, where protection must evolve as quickly as the pressures it faces. The choices made now will determine whether this country remains a living example of balance or a warning of how easily gains can be undone. The future of Costa Rica's wild places. The future of Costa Rica is still being written. Few countries have shown that deliberate choices can reverse environmental decline. Costa Rica has already proven that recovery is possible, but the work ahead is about endurance, not celebration. Forests that once vanished are growing back. Reforestation has reshaped hillsides and valleys, linking national parks through wildlife corridors that allow animals to move safely between habitats. Jaguars, tapirs, and migratory birds depend on these connections as climate and land use continue to change. Protection is no longer about isolated reserves. It is about connectivity, ensuring that rivers can flow freely, that forests stretch beyond park boundaries, and that coastlines remain buffered by mangroves and wetlands. Energy plays a role as well. Costa Rica generates most of its electricity from renewable sources: hydropower, wind, geothermal, and solar, reducing pressure on forests and fossil resources. But even renewable success brings challenges. Hydropower depends on reliable rainfall. Changing climate patterns test systems built on past stability. Adaptation now requires flexibility, diversified energy sources, and ecosystem protection upstream. On land, conservation is increasingly local. Farmers adopt shade-grown crops that support wildlife. Communities manage forests for long-term benefit rather than short-term gain. Education ensures that environmental stewardship is not policy alone, but shared understanding. Science guides these efforts. Researchers track species movement, monitor coral health, and study how ecosystems respond to rising temperatures. Data informs action, allowing management to adjust before damage becomes irreversible. Climate change remains the defining challenge. Some habitats will shift upslope. Some species will decline. Not every loss can be prevented, but scale matters. When ecosystems are large, connected, and healthy, they absorb change rather than collapse under it. Costa Rica's strength lies not in perfection, but in persistence, a willingness to revise policies, invest in nature, and treat protection as a long-term commitment. The country's wild places are not relics of the past. They are working systems, providing water, stability, food, and resilience in an increasingly uncertain world. The question ahead is not whether Costa Rica can protect nature. It is whether it can continue to lead. As conditions grow more complex, if the past offers guidance, the answer lies in the same principle that shaped this land from the beginning: connection between people and forests, between mountains and rivers, between protection today and possibility tomorrow. Costa Rica shows us something rare: that nature does not have to be a casualty of progress, that forests can return, that wildlife can recover, and that a country, no matter its size, can choose a different path. From volcanic mountains and cloud forests, to mangroves, reefs, and two living oceans, Costa Rica proves that connection matters. Between land and water, between people and place, between protection and the future. This is not a story of untouched wilderness. It is a story of responsibility, of understanding that what is protected today shapes what survives tomorrow. If you've enjoyed this journey through one of the most biodiverse places on Earth, please like the video. It really helps support the channel and the work behind it. And subscribe to Apex Atlas for more cinematic documentaries exploring the nature, geography, and hidden stories of countries around the world. More landscapes, more wildlife, more stories worth protecting. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next destination.